With Major League Baseball still being locked out, we have no choice but to lock in another area. And today we're going to focus on Julius Randle and his current team, the New York Knicks. I'm joined by Mets fan and All Rhino, aka Andrew Acevedo, as we're going to talk about Julius Randle, the guy on the court, the guy off the court, and what the Knicks could do to improve the team, whether that is with or without Julius Randle. So first of all, the Julius Randle on the court. Obviously, everybody knows not the same guy this year that he was last year. Don't need to hear that whole explanation again. But the problem is that you look at Julius Randle, let's use the most recent example. Last night against the Memphis Grizzlies, puts up 18, 12, and 9. And in a regular basketball conversation, say, hey, this guy put up 18, 12, and 9. Pretty effective night, if you ask me. But then when you dig deeper into it and you see the guy went 7 of 18 from the floor, aka 38%, he had 5 fouls, he got ejected late in the game, and was a -9 for the game. All of a sudden you say, actually, you know what? That stat line wasn't too great. And that's just the way it's felt with Julius Randle, especially recently. There are far too many nights where he has single digits. He doesn't even have a good box score. But even the nights where his numbers look good, the play doesn't translate that. And it's more so the way you do it. And Julius Randle is not taking smart shots. He's not doing smart things, taking the ball up too much, not making the right moves when he does have the ball, whether it's taking weird contested mid-range jump shots, just not taking what the defense gives him, not creating for other guys, not being effective without the ball, not being effective defensively. And then the bigger problem that's we're going to be what ultimately decides his fate in New York is the way he has behaved. Ever since the thumbs down situation, we've just seen this reoccurring poor behavior from Julius Randle, not talking to the media, not being a good teammate. If a guy's on the ground, not picking them up, not giving them high fives, being disengaged from huddles. So now the Knicks find themselves in a situation where they had a little bit of expectations this year. They said, okay, we lost to Atlanta. We made a couple moves, tried to improve our offense, improve our shot creating. And now you look at the Knicks, they're playing even worse. And they're in the stretch of games where they're in a rough spell. I mean, they're in their last 10 games, 3-7. So, I mean, and it's felt worse than that. It's like 8 of 9 or something like that. So the Knicks have been struggling. They got to make a move before the season gets even worse. And they get to a point where they can't come back. They can't get back into the race, can't get back into the playoff hunt. So then we ask ourselves, well, how could the Knicks improve? If you look at what's available externally, the guy that stands out the most is De'Aaron Fox. Some other guys that have been talked about a lot are Jalen Brunson and Miles Turner. As far as if you want to keep Randle, the only guys that really would help him are, again, those same 3 guys. So whether it's with Randle, whether it's without Randle, the Knicks are very limited on options. So, Mets fan, you have been one of the biggest Julius Randle critics. How do you even summarize it? And just because it's been so much lately.
I mean, I don't even know what to say at this point. This man has just looked awful. When you look at Randall just on the floor, and there's been so many instances where he's just touching the ball for 10, 12 seconds of the shot clock, and I'm just like, no, stop, please stop. And it gets so frustrating because I'm pretty sure out of every NBA starter, he is in like top 5 of like wasted possessions. And there's been so many times where he's come into the game or he's in the game where he's destroyed so much momentum. And the fact that he's been outplayed by pretty much everyone at his position and other guys who can contribute at his power forward, small forward position, it's just crazy. Not to mention the fact that he also forgets that he's 6'9", 240 pounds, and he's shooting like he's, I don't understand how you can have a successful offense going through this guy. To be honest, I don't see why this guy would have to be taking 25 shots a game when you have such a selection of talent around him. It just makes absolutely no sense.
And I think the big problem is that Julius Randle, his biggest asset should be his strength, like you said, the frame he has. But the problem is, I always say that paint is a little crowded when Mitchell Robinson is staying there. So that's an automatic help defender. And I mean, do they trust that all these other guys are going to step up? I mean, we saw there was a play yesterday where Julius Randle has a man wide open, top of the key, and he throws it into the backcourt. I mean, just completely misses the open pass after the double comes. So he's just not making the right decisions. And unfortunately, a guy like RJ Barrett is in a really kind of awkward scenario where he's like, Do I try to? What is Julius doing? Is Julius going to shoot? Is he going to try to create for one of us? And you see Barrett kind of like swaying. Like, do I cut to the basket? Do I stay behind the 3-point line? Like, where should I go? And if Julius Randle, I mean, I hate to bash the guy because I like him personally. I like the person, but the player, Kemba Walker, the starting point guard, is not creating good shots for Julius Randle. They're not running a pick and roll with Julius Randle. They're not getting switches where Julius Randle can post up a smaller defender, not setting up Julius Randle in good spots. They just give Randle the ball with a defender right now. I mean, like you said, he's pounding the air out of the ball, and all of a sudden you have hardly any time left on the shot clock. So now we know that, like, obviously Randle's been bad, but like I said, the fit's not good. So then, Andrew, how could we shake it up a little bit to make the fit, whether you keep Randle, make it more beneficial for him so that he fits better with the guys on the court, or just getting him off the court completely?
I mean, if you want to keep it in-house, an idea that I kind of just thought about is maybe move if you were to move a Mitchell Robinson for a bigger piece, maybe have Randle play the 5. I know, yes, he's 6'9", he's shorter, but you let him just be in the paint and, maybe insert Cam Reddish, or maybe there's another wing who can shoot. Just open up the paint and say, hey, Julius, if we're going to run through you, you're going to have the paint to yourself, and that's where he was most successful. I think he played a little bit last year at the 5. I think when Noel was hurt and obviously Robinson was out, he played a little more 5. And I think that, again, it gave him the space that he had the paint. And let's say now with a Fournier here, if he's still here, again, let's say they don't make any trades. Now you have Fournier you can dish it out to where he can play the double. The paint's clear for him. So you can just let him say, hey, back it up and then pass the shoot. The double teams, we all know he isn't the greatest. He gets very reckless when the double comes. But, you hope that last year, again, he made the right play. When the double came, he saw the open man, or he went for the basket, or he made the right pass. This year, again, dribbling out the shot clock, and RJ seems to only get the ball from Kemba, it seems like. Again, like, he has that good correlation with Fournier. Obviously the Celtics in the first game of the year is always just seeing that they're a little two-man game. But if he's staying on this roster, and let's say the best thing for him, if he is to stay, you maybe need to get him to clear the space. So maybe that means Robinson has to go, or, have him play the center position, because that would make it most effective, because there wouldn't be guys crowding the paint, like you said, where it's just him in the paint, and then try to get him some shooters around him and let him play. If you're going to let him be the point forward, I think that'd probably be the best for him to stay.
Yeah, and the only matchup that would be like unplayable for him is when you play Philadelphia and your center is Julius Randle. Joel Embiid says barbecue chicken alert, and you're done. Like, I mean, that's too easy. And Brook Lopez, maybe, like back in the day, Brook Lopez would take advantage, but now he's been mitigated to just standing at the 3-point line. Then you find yourself, well, who the heck is going to guard Giannis? Like, I mean, you're going to put RJ on him.
I mean, Noel played pretty well against Giannis. I mean, it's different. You play the matchup, yeah.
Center, Noel can't be on.
Well, I mean, 100%.
Like there's certain matchups where the top of, not the Knicks are at that stage yet, but if like long term, like when you face the top echelon teams, Eastern Conference, there are a couple teams that if you play, you're screwed. And then in the West, when you play Jokic, when you play Cat, I mean, look out. But I think that it's something to consider. Like, every now and then, if you are facing a team that doesn't have the Embiid, doesn't have the Jokic, and you want to close a small ball lineup of Randle at the 5, Cam at the 4, you have a lot more options and a lot more creative offense that you could run than you do right now. And the problem is that the next person we have to go to is Tom Thibodeau, because Thibodeau is not known for his X's and O's amazing scheme, getting guys open shots and great shots. Thibodeau is more of a defensive guy and more of maybe it's a hero ISO ball on offense. Kind of just, I don't want to say do what you want, but at times that's kind of what it looks like. It kind of looks like, here's the ball, make a play. Yeah. I mean, that's what it looks like. So you don't really see that much imaginative play calling to get shots for guys, get open looks. So like, it's something they could consider an occasional small ball lineup. But what I go back to is, even if the Knicks were to do that, like, I would hate to lose Mitchell Robinson just for Julius Randle after what he had, like, with the way he has behaved in this past month or so. He hasn't earned that. I mean, he's if anything, he's going to be like, no, Mitchell Robinson stays because he's playing his heart out and being a team player, and you go. So I think, like, that's because even if you did do things like got more spacing on court without the center, got a true point guard, even got a different coach, no matter what, Julius Randle is Julius Randle, the person. So I just don't see that there's a way, especially the way New York is. I don't think there's anything he could do to make up for the things that he did and said. Like, he made it worse. It was one thing to do thumbs down. You would think after what happened with our Mets, you wouldn't even think of it. But then his reasoning for it just, I mean, made it so much worse than even the action was. So, I mean, Mets fan, it's like, it's really your only alternative. Like, you want to be considerate. You want to try to be like, okay, we don't have to get rid of the guy. But, I mean, what else can you really do at this point?
You have invested a lot into Randle. You gave him a 4-year extension. What was it, $118 million or whatever? I was not for extending him after that entire performance he had in the playoffs last year. But, and I'm definitely not for it right now, but I don't see any case where it's like, okay, we need to cater to Randle's need. Even last year, he was great last year. Top 5 in MVP. I mean, most improved player. He was great last year, but I don't think he has that type of volume of a player to just be like, okay, I want this, I want that. He's not LeBron, shall we say. I think he thinks he's a lot less replaceable than he is. And that's another thing I don't like this type of ego that he's built for himself. And I personally know, I know with disrespect to this fan base, but that those types of egos, they belong in Brooklyn right now. So I'm not trying to say, okay, this is the guy you build around. This is the guy you put everybody around, because the way that he runs the floor, the way they play through him, it's slow pace. It's so clogged up. I mean, it's just, you can see that everybody else connects with everybody else on the floor when he's not touching the ball. He's actually not that bad off ball. He just doesn't do anything. He doesn't use his athleticism either. Like, that's the thing, like, everything runs through him. He is the main guy here. It's not like, you know, RJ's that main ball handler. God forbid Mitch is the main guy on the offense. He is the main guy. So the fact that these starters, especially, they're struggling on the floor, that whole plus minus, this whole on and off metrics, all of those things, those are all on him. He has been the main point. I just don't see any reason why you can improve this team without taking him out of the equation. I can't see it.
And the most amazing, the full 360, if you want to get to specifics, in the MVP voting, Julius Randle finished 8th. Finished 8th in total MVP voting. And this isn't like baseball where it's one conference. I mean, this is the whole NBA, including both conferences. He was number 8. And like you said, this ego that he has built this year, he looks like such a different guy this year from last year, where, okay, you made an all-star team, you were number 8 MVP voting, you were most improved player, but like you said, you're not a perennial all-star, you're not a perennial top 10 MVP finisher. So like it looked like a time where the guy was the leader last year, like he was the leader of the team. So that's why he gave him the contract extension, to be the leader. But when you're disengaged from the huddle, when you're again, not picking up guys that you're laying on the floor, just helping your teammate up, stuff like that is just absolutely, and not talking to the media, giving fans thumbs down. Like, those are all the things that a leader doesn't do. Andrew, like, what else do you see? Just like the differences, whether it's the play or the person, last year to this year. Could it just be the guy kind of got lax after a season where like he's like, I'm good now? Like, I mean, what happened mentally there is really the question.
I mean, he got his bag and ran. You know, he said he got paid. Now he can just relax. Maybe it is the All-Star game. Maybe it's just like, hey, I brought this franchise that has won nothing and got them into the playoffs. I'm the guy who did it. I mean, again, he's not playing smart. He's trying to play hero ball, and that's all he is. He's always going to do these, get the ball with 16 on the shot clock, dribble out, and do some crazy spinning jump shot, fading away. At least last year he would do those, and he completely lost knowing how to shoot at a 3-pointer. He was shooting like 40% last year. Now I think he's at like 34 or like something crazy like that. He dipped. But then like at least last year he made the right play. Now he's like not the playmaker that he was last year, because he saw if it was Bullock or
And you also had the defense last year that could make up for those mistakes that he made last year.
Yeah.
And you don't, because of the other guys that you brought in, but that's another story.
And I mean, I'm not going to give him the excuse, but I know our good buddy Mark Berman gave him the excuses. Derrick Rose was a big part of him being the leader last year in the locker room and not having him. Obviously, I guess he's been with the team, but he's also, obviously he's had the surgery, so he's been away from the team. And Julius has said that he's the leader of the team. I mean, yes, the fans have always said, like, because he's the best player, you think the best player is the leader. He's always said that D Rose was that guy, and he helped him be kind of like that secondary leader behind D Rose. And obviously taking D Rose away, hopefully, obviously he'll be back after the All-Star break. And I'm not saying that's an excuse to say, hey, you learned from him. Why don't you do at least try to be like him? I'm not saying you got to do that, but maybe that taking that crutch away of like him being the leader and like learning behind him could be effective him somewhat. But maybe this is mental. Again, the pressure of being in New York, and you would have thought him doing the thing that we also thought was impossible last year, getting this team to the playoffs. And yes, there was no expectations, and yes, the expectation obviously in New York with New York fans, gotta love them, is going to be skyrocketing. It was all good when it was going well. There was no problems, and maybe it had to do with last year being the empty arenas, where it was empty arenas pretty much the whole year. And in the playoffs, and you saw in the playoffs, he kind of shrunk when the fans came back. So maybe maybe again, a fluky one, it's more of a baseball term, but maybe a lucky, 1 year where it's like, obviously you look at the bubble. Some of like these guys had their best game, for like some of these nobody players in the NBA down in the bubble. They went crazy.
TJ Warren.
Yeah. TJ Warren, he's like TJ Warren went crazy. The Suns didn't win a game just to not make the play, the play-in or whatever. But maybe the empty arenas helped him in the fact that, hey, he doesn't have the booing. There's no, they could lose and he's not hearing the booing from the crowd. So maybe that is something that we maybe should have took more investment in. And obviously we don't want to count anything that happened in 2020 because, it is a unique year. But maybe, again, in baseball, we say we don't want to overrate 2020. Maybe it's Knicks fans, maybe the Knicks front office maybe overrated Julius Randle's 2020.
I would just hope that the guy's mental makeup isn't that bad, but judging by his behavior lately, like maybe it is. And I think that when you're avoiding the media, it shows me that you are unwilling to handle criticism. The fact that you literally run away and won't even if you gave generic responses, I'll look at the tape, will be better, just the generic stuff you hear athletes say, just to not show up at all. And then when he does show up, he's ordering food on the phone. Like, what's that? And he only did it when they won. The actual game that they did win.
Yeah, you're not going to see him lose. Nope.
Then he shows up to do the interview. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense what you're saying, Andrew, because when you put all the pieces together, no fans to fans, like, whoa, wait a second. And then when you're not playing well and they're on you a little bit, you start to lose a little bit of your confidence. And then all of a sudden you can't make the right play because like the mental block of like your confidence is shot. Like when you're loose and you're just like, I'm making the play. I know the reads, RJ's there, boom, whoever's there, I got it, I'm giving to him. Then all of a sudden you're kind of in between. You're like, do I kick it out? Do I maybe turn? Like he's overthinking it. And that's what we see. Like I said last night, we've got a wide open guy, a double team is coming, and you're throwing it in the backcourt. So, I mean, and it would stink that, like, and the Knicks, like, they were blind to it. Like you said, like, you know what? They were like, oh, maybe just a bad playoff series. Maybe he was worn down. But it seems that, like, as things progress, where now the team, like you said, they had no expectations. Now they do have expectations. You don't live up to it. You get booed. And, like, we just see him getting worse and worse and worse.
Go back to continue to the point of fans being an issue with him in the building or not. Take a guess what his stats are in his first year at MSG as a Knick. 19, 9, and 3 assists. Guess what he's averaging this year? 19, 9. In 2, now he has 5 assists. I will say playmaking.
Like 2 years ago.
With his first year,
because he's touched the ball a lot.
When the fans were in the building,
yeah,
he's going right back to what he was first year.
That's interesting. I never heard him bring that point. That's interesting. First year he was here, he was kind of he wasn't the guy they paid for because remember the year before that he was pretty good. When he went to New Orleans?
New Orleans, yeah, 21.
He played all right. Yeah. They signed him to a contract, and he wasn't great. He didn't really live up to it. Then the next year, the COVID year, played great. Yep. An extension, crazy, and now he goes back to the guy from the first year of the contract. Correlation, the common factor with fans in the building, year one and this year. So that's a very interesting point.
I mean, we've talked about like the whole thing about leadership and him. Like we talk about this all the time with a lot of our in baseball, minor league baseball. it's either you have it or you don't. Like that's the type of thing. And what I've seen from Julius Randle throughout his entire career, even before he came to the Knicks, he's a hothead. He's a guy who definitely gets angry very easily, and you can see the difference between him and RJ. RJ, and he talked about this before the Knicks even drafted him. He's like, I'm made for New York. My confidence, I'm made for this. And he's shown that. Even when RJ struggles, his composure right there. We had one game like a week ago. That was the angriest I ever seen RJ over a foul call or something. That's the type of guy that can be a leader one day. Obviously, he's not there yet. But the thing about Randle is that he gets so flustered sometimes, not even sometimes, all the time, especially this year, that he can't make the right play. Like his mind is just on another planet. And like every time when you see him have the ball, you're like, oh, there's a 75% chance that something bad's going to happen. So every time he puts up a shot, I have absolutely no confidence in it. Like, it's just, I don't know, like, yeah, he'll get his 20 a game, mainly because he's taken the 25, 30 shots a game. I don't see how he has been a leader at all. Even last year, there were even sparks of it where he's doing something and I'm like, what are you doing here? But they had the defense to bail him out. Right now they don't. So what's the deal here? And to be honest, if Derrick Rose was a little bit younger, maybe a little healthier, that would be the leader of the team. That's the guy who's starting every time. And if Derrick Rose was Derrick Rose, the guy that he was drafted by the Bulls, yeah, of course. It's so easy that one bad thing can make things go completely wrong. And that's why I think he's just, at the end of the day, he's just not made for New York. Because in New York, it's just, when things go wrong, things are going to go wrong. That's just how it is. It's just not, like, he's just not built for that type of, there for it 24/7 in the highs or the lows. Like, that's just how I see it. What we've talked about, what have you done for me lately? Like, that's basically what we're talking about. And he hasn't done anything lately. He's gotten worse. That type of leadership, I don't see in him. I never really have. Like, when they brought in Rose, I was like, okay, this is good. This is good. This guy can help the guys on the bench, maybe help some of the guys in the starting lineup. He's a good guy to have on the floor. But as for Randle, it's so easy for fans to turn on him. And you can see why. I mean, that's been a warning before they even traded for him. He's a turnover machine. He makes a lot of bonehead decisions. He likes to have the ball in his hand. And that's just, you can just see when he doesn't have the ball in his hand, he's not interested at all. So he has the spurts of him trying or whatever, but it just makes, like, he's just not playing a complete game.
One more thing about just we're keeping it strictly on the court. You can tell the other players are knowing that too, because I was watching, I think it was the Raptors game or one of the games this past week where Randall's got the ball at the top of the key, he's doing his dribble. And then you have Fournier and Barrett in the corner just standing next to each other. Nobody's moving because they know the ball's Julius. This is his ISO or whatever. But you would think, like, if I'm Gibbs, I'm having one of them cut, the other one at least. They're both sitting in the corner 2 feet apart. Like, there is no, like, urgency. Maybe if I cut, he'll make the right play. They know he's going to shoot. He gets the ball, he's going to shoot it. And if I'm like, I don't know what Tibbs is like, oh, we can't make a change. Like, there's no change at all. And that's just something like where you got to make the best play possible. And it's just like that those little things, even the players are picking up, like, hey, here goes this guy. And like, I don't want to disrespect Melo, but like when Melo got the ball, it was a good chance Melo wasn't giving it the ball. But at least Melo was hitting his shots. We were like, okay, Melo getting the ball, Melo's going to get the bucket. Where like Randall last year was doing that, but now, I don't know.
You trust Melo on isolation. That's the thing. With Randall, I really never have.
Like, Melo is an all-time scorer, one-on-one scorer that we'll ever see. Not just Knicks history, like basketball history. I mean, he's up there as far as all-time scores. Again, like, Randall has the notion that he's Melo, but he's just not. So, and that's a big problem. Like, there is no spacing, like we said with Tibbs. There is no game plan or scheme. And even if, let's say, like you said, Derrick Rose is going to come back pretty soon. Even if Rose comes back, I don't see how all of a sudden Randall is going to be engaged in huddles. He's going to give high fives to fans. He's going to show up to media press conferences when the Knicks play bad. Like, I just don't see how, even if D Rose came back, if all of a sudden Randle's going to become a different person. And it's like Mets fans said, like, you don't learn leadership. You either got it or you don't got it. You're either made for New York or you're not. And evidently, as the days go on, more and more, it's pretty clear he's not made for New York. And then what is really the most alarming thing about Randle, like Metsfan talked earlier about plus minus, more so the difference when Randle is on the court compared to when Randle is off the court and when Obi Toppin is on the court. That's what I want to get to, because how many games do the Knicks have in the past week or two where the Knicks, they fall behind big, 20 points, 15 points, double digit, and all of a sudden Randle comes off the floor, Obi Toppin comes in, single digit game. All of a sudden, just magically, all of a sudden it's a single point game, and Obi Toppin's not scoring 20 points. He's not getting 10 assists, but he's just doing more team-friendly things. He's playing hard on defense. He's running in transition. He's moving around without the basketball. All things that Julius Randle is not doing, even when he has an 18, 12, and 9 game. So it's more so like the little things. It's just the overall what you're doing, whether with the ball, without the ball, whether you're having a good night or not having a good night. It's like, and Andrew said also, the little things that Randle is just not doing.
And it's not just it's every night. It's not just one game. It's every night. Starters. Rarely does this team, and like I know the Leafs, this isn't a hockey thing, but the Leafs last year as a hockey fan, they were always a team, they never started on time. It seemed like every first period they go in, they're down 2 goals. The Knicks are the same thing. Where the Knicks start off, they're always going to go down 12 or 15. If Julius is a rare night that Kemba's hot, like early, this team never starts off well. And then, again, the Quickleys and Grimes and Obi, they have to fight it back in. And then Tibbs puts in Randle. And then, if he's hot, he's hot. But majority of the time it isn't. So, again, it continues to be the peaks and valleys where, yes, when you got Randle burning 35 minutes a night, what Obi deserves, in his last couple, if you've noticed the last couple games, Obi's been getting more minutes, which has been good. Finally, it seems like Tibbs is starting to slowly cut back on Randle's minutes. Not by much, but an extra couple minutes have gone to Obi. Because, again, this offense, I don't know what it is with this team. It's like the first quarter, they're always 7 minutes in or 7 minutes in the game. Oh, the Knicks are down 12 or the Knicks are down 15. And then here comes the, quick, and the bench comes in. Yeah. Boom, it's a completely different team. And I've seen some people be like, well, why don't we put the bench as the start? It's stupid, but put the bench as an opposite and then have Randle come off the bench. The difference is they just need to line up. They need to change the lineup somewhere. And Tibbs has been so hard-headed that, again, it's the same story every game. You would think the head coaches, because as fans, we see it every game. It's always, and then Tibbs is like, nope, not going to hit the starters. Maybe you put Grimes, maybe it's, again, and that's why the trades need to be made. Because, just a different look to this team is needed.
And I think it has to do with, like Mets fans said, about pace and about, Randle bringing up the ball. It's slow. It's nothing really going on. But when the bench comes in and Emmanuel Quickly's on the floor and he's running and Obi Toppin's running and Rose Noel is running and they're playing defense and they're just moving in transition, there's identity. There's something going on where it's a consistent form of basketball that you could play well. Meanwhile, the starters, like we said, it's that ISO ball of all right, what are we doing now? And that's probably why there is such a disparity in the performance of the team when you have the starters versus the bench. Is because the bench has an identity. They have a play style. The starters, it's that's not a play style. That's just a bunch of randomness going on all at once.
It's just the sense of urgency. They've gone down very big to start off games, and the starters come out. These guys have to climb back into it. And that's really been something that's been good for a lot of these players' development on the bench for the Knicks. I'm not saying go down by 20 to start off the game and bring in the bench every game. But what I'm saying is that sense of urgency that they have, that type of pace that they bring, it's young. They're younger. They're the guys that, should be getting a majority of the minutes and the guys that they should be 100% high on. Obviously you have to have your veterans and everything, but to put all of this confidence into these veterans thinking that, oh, well, they figured it out last year, they'll figure it out now. Can't just keep doing the same thing and just expect a different result. I mean, we talked about that with the Mets manager too. It's frustrating that how stubborn Tibbs has been, how stubborn pretty much everybody has been to not even make a change. And that's the main reason why I think, we can bring in Leon Rose to this equation. Leon Rose did a great job trading off Knox, with a first-round pick for Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish, a great guy that they do need. That type of 3-and-D type of guy. But I feel like Tibbs and Leon Rose maybe not on the same page here. And it's like, what are we dealing with? Like, we don't know. And as they continue to lose and lose and lose, and if they don't make a trade here, like I've said multiple times, they're going to fall farther and farther out of playoff. It's all just a waiting game right now.
You got it, Metsfan. With the whole, there's a little bit of a disconnect between Tibbs and Rose, and the biggest example was the Kemba Walker signing. Tibbs was not in favor of Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker is not a Tibbs player. Like Derrick Rose is a Tibbs player. Alfred Payton is a Tibbs guy. Like that kind of like point guard that's kind of defense first. Like Kemba is just no defense at all. Like we know Kemba has his limitations defensively. You saw that where Tibbs just found an excuse, just like, no, Kemba's not playing anymore. He's out of the rotation. And then when Kemba finally got a chance by default, it was because I think it was COVID, injuries, whatever. Like Kemba had to come back in. He has those 2 great games around Christmas time, and Tibbs had no choice but to put Kemba back in the lineup. So I think you're right. There definitely is something going on there. And unfortunately, like as much as I like Tibbs, as much as like you said, like what him and Randle did last year of getting the Knicks back into the playoffs, making them a little bit relevant was such a big accomplishment that like you want to reward the guys. You want to say, okay, we finally found the coach, because the history of Knicks coaches in the past 10 years is another video in itself. When you actually look at the list and just how bad these other guys were compared to Tom Thibodeau, which is why, like, even though we know Tibbs' strengths, we obviously know his weaknesses, I just find it so risky to let him go and find yourself in that situation again where you're bringing in the Derek Fishers, you're bringing in all these different coaches that Jeff Hornacek, all these coaches that Knicks brought in that just were not the guys. And I don't want to see him do that again. Now, if you bring in Mark Jackson, he's been out of the game for quite a while now, but at least he has a New York personality, so he knows what this town is like. I think Mark Jackson would be so excited to have another opportunity at coaching again that he would really try to make the most of it, maybe be a little more adaptable, knowing what didn't go well in Golden State and try to learn from his experience. Because I feel like, again, Tibbs is who Tibbs is. I feel like maybe Mark Jackson be a little more open, and maybe he'd be on a better page with Leon Rose. Obviously, again, Tibbs did a great job. I'm not knocking him, but it's clear that he is not going to change. Like, this is what Tibbs does. No matter where he coaches, he plays the vets and not the young guys. And you don't trade away a draft pick and get Cam Reddish. And Cam Reddish wants a contract this summer. So you got to see what you have in Cam Reddish before you make that big decision. And if you don't play the guy, we'll never know what you do with him. And what bothers me is that the Knicks, they obviously felt like they needed somebody like Derrick Rose last year. They traded for him, and they did it well in advance of the trade deadline. They didn't do it the day of the trade deadline. They did it well in advance. So I don't see why there's no reason why you can't make a trade now or last week or earlier this week. Clear something needs to change, whether it's Burks, Fournier, Kemba, Randle, or someone else. Hopefully not those young guys like a Grimes or, a Toppin. You want to keep those guys, Mitchell Robinson. You want to see what you have in them. But it's clear that there needs to be a change, and I just hope that they do it as soon as possible. And if the excuse is like, oh, we can't find any room for Cam Reddish, trade away Alec Burks for anything. I mean, I think that seeing what Cam Reddish has in him is much more important than seeing if Alec Burks could win you games, which the answer is no, he can't. So it's like you might as well just have Grimes play the 2 and make Cam Reddish the backup 3. At least that'll get him more minutes. And if he does well with those minutes, you keep increasing it. And then you could just play around a little bit. Maybe you cut into Fournier's minutes a little bit. And then you we were talking about off stream, but you could move Barrett to the 2, move Cam Reddish to the 3. And like you said, every now and then, maybe put Julius Randle at the 5, Cam Reddish at the 4. Like Cam Reddish's body, his skill set, it could be used in a multitude of ways. So you got to find some different combinations. You got to tinker around. So again, this way come the summertime when you want to know if you want to make a decision on Cam Reddish, you know what he is. It's like, okay, we know we can make him a 4, we can make him a 3, you can play with this guy, you can't play with that guy. You won't know if you don't use the guy. If he just sits on the bench, how would you ever know? So, I mean, that's what's frustrating me the most about Thibodeau is that we were kind of excited, like, okay, Cam Reddish, that's something new. He could help, but if he doesn't play, what was the point of the trade? Kemba's going to give you 0 points. Like, you might as well play with pride. Like, what else do you have to lose at this point? So I just think that's where they find themselves right now. And that's why, to me, I would be – and I saw a while back Ian Begley said there's belief that some people in the Sacramento Kings kind of see something in Julius Randle. Well, I see quite a bit in De'Aaron Fox. I'm not saying De'Aaron Fox is your franchise point guard. I'm not saying he's going to save the Knicks and carry them to the promised land. But when you look at the history of the Knicks point guard the past decade, De'Aaron Fox is so much better than what they've had. And what I love the most, he's 24, he's young, he's fast, which would be perfect with these other young guys that they have. The Toppin, the Reddish, the Barrett, the Quickly. Just go down the whole roster. De'Aaron Fox fits with those guys so well. So if there's some way that a trade starts with Randle and Fox and you move on from there, if you have to throw in Burks, you have to throw in some draft picks, I say you do it, because at this point, what else do you have to lose? Because it is clear, and especially where the Knicks are right now, the Knicks are not in a position where they're going to, let's say, tank, or even if they did, they would not have a top pick to get a franchise point guard. So I think the only chance you have at getting a good point guard, not great, but good point guard that could actually run an offense, could run plays, even if you had Julius Randle, you could actually help make the most out of him, would be to acquire De'Aaron Fox. So I think that would be my trade deadline focus. Whatever it takes, as long as I would try to keep, obviously keep Grimes, keep Quickly. I would try to keep Toppin if I have to move from De'Aaron Fox. Like, a point guard so important. Sometimes, I mean, you got to make the trade fair for both sides. So I would just see what Sacramento is willing to do, because the Sacramento is open to it, I would imagine. With Tyrese Halliburton, with Davion Mitchell, if you have a surplus, and Sacramento needs all the help they could get, and if they could get quite a bundle for De'Aaron Fox, particularly picks-wise, just to make their future better, they were obviously a rebuilding team. Well, the Knicks, like we said, they had some expectations this year. They made the playoffs, and when they got Kemba Fournier, they thought that maybe they'd get out of the first round. So their expectations, like, let's be a playoff team, let's get past the first round. They're not looking for draft picks. They should be looking to get a point guard in De'Aaron Fox.
You have so many guys that could be, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, you've also talked about, Kemba being one of those veterans that, that usually Tibbs would stick with. I mean, Kemba here, he's making $7 million. So he doesn't have really much of an obligation. He can eat $8 million. Like, he doesn't have that much of a.
It's not like Fournier, where it's a multi-year contract.
Is it a 2-year? 2-year?
It's a one and one. It's a
1 and 1.
1+1, yeah.
Yeah, 1+1.
So he doesn't have that obligation to say, okay, well, I can take Kemba out of the rotation, whatever.
Where, like, because of his contract, I have to play him. Like the Mets are going to be with Cano this year, where it's like we got to play him no matter what. That's not the case with Kemba Walker. So you don't have anything tied down to him. And even if D Rose comes back, like, that shouldn't take away from De'Aaron Fox's minutes. That shouldn't take away from Manuel Quickly's minutes, because what I'm looking at,
Quickly can play the two.
It's like play the two, and what I'm more concerned about,
and he plays it pretty well.
Yeah, because he's a shooter. I mean, that's what Quickly is a better shooter than he is a facilitator. So I would be more concerned about the long term. Like, as much as we like Derrick Rose, like, he's not. How much longer is Derrick Rose going to be a viable contributor for the Knicks? Like, not that much longer. But De'Aaron Fox, Quickly, these guys, you got to see what you have in them. And the only way they're going to improve is if they play more. So it doesn't do any good of them losing minutes to Burks, losing minutes to Fournier or Randle, especially if you're not winning. Like, even if you have to trade Fournier or Burks for a second-round pick, with the way the Knicks have done with later draft picks, the Knicks have done much better with later draft picks than lottery draft picks. I mean, where you go like Frank Ntilikina compared to Emmanuel Quickly, or you look at Obi Toppin compared to Quentin Grimes, like, you could just see that they do better with second-round picks anyway. So maybe the Knicks could make more of a second-round pick than a normal organization would. So I think a Burks for a second-round pick would help you in the future, and it will help you now, because you would open up a playing time for, like I said, whether it's a Cam Reddish or anybody else you want to try out. Maybe, like we said, move Quickly down, play McBride more. Like, you just give yourself a lot more flexibility. And that's what concerns me most about Tom Thibodeau, is that he will play like a Taj Gibson or crazy amount of minutes. And prior to him giving in the Toppin more often, Randle was playing close to 40 minutes a night. Like, what? Like, that's just not that's not good long term. Like, you could just run into so many injury problems, and Randle could just be gassed. Even if he was playing well, you could just straight up get gassed playing those kind of minutes. But that's what Tibbs does. I mean, you look at throughout his history, even back in his days with the Bulls, Jimmy Butler played insane minutes under Tom Thibodeau. Like, that's what he does. That's his coaching style. He plays his starters just insane, unusual amount, uncommon amount of minutes compared to other organizations.
There's also Jericho Sims, who we don't even see. He's just vibing on the bench. We don't even know what the hell he's doing. So it's like you have 4 guys who could play the center position, right? and like I guess 2.5 of them get playing time on a regular basis. These guys can provide value if they're distributed properly. Except Luka Samaratic, that international guy, I don't know what his deal is, but Luka Doncic, maybe he's got something.
And what's problematic is that, like, you look at, let's say, last night's box score, for example, Jericho Sims, Cam Reddish, Miles McBride, not even a second played. Like they didn't get to take the warm-ups off. Like that's just how bad those guys are. Like, that's how bad they're on the bench. So, like, that's inexcusable. You know, it's like if you're getting your butt kicked by Memphis, it gets to a point where, like, what do you have to lose? Because, again, if you're just playing these guys over and over expecting a different result, obviously it's not happening. So why not play the Jericho Sims, the McBride, the Reddish, the whoever? Why not?
And I mean, okay, I'm going to be the delusional Knicks fan here, which maybe this is all a great idea. We've got all this talent. And, you know, the NBA, it's about super teams. And we have all this talent, all this young youth. And guess what? We got a ton of draft picks. So let's say the first domino to fall is De'Aaron Fox. We flip Julius, you know, Burks, maybe throw a first-round pick or, you know, maybe a couple first and a couple of seconds. You know, it depends how motivated the Kings are and how Leon can finesse the Kings out. Then that's the first thing. And then once Utah gets bounced out in the first round next year, we go and get Donovan Mitchell to play another 2 guard. Then we got our big 2, RJ. You know, if RJ's got to get moved for Donovan Mitchell, buy RJ. If we can keep RJ can play the 3. So there's our big 3. Then we got to figure, and then maybe Obi's probably gone too. The NBA is more, especially the playoff team. In the playoffs, you only get like a 8-man rotation. So yes, and are we biased to these young guys because that's our team and we love? And yes, you know, are they really that good, or is it only because, hey, we hate Fournier and he's better than Fournier, or, you know, what's it called? When Burks was here or Bullock was here, we're like, you know, we want this guy to play. Is it maybe just because, hey, we have guys on this team we don't like, we want to see these guys over? So again, we don't know what the general perspective on these guys are. We might think they're really good young players. Other teams might say these guys suck. Why do you guys? You have no value. So, you know, it's a good mix of, hey, you have young value and you have the 2 best things in basketball. You have draft capital and you can make cap space because, again, these contracts are $10 million. Obviously, Fournier and Randle, the only 2 big contracts, but Burks $10 million. D-Rose about 13, but I wouldn't move D-Rose. Noel 9. Some of these guys are just on cheaper deals, so they can move, and then boom, there's cap space. We want to get back in the playoffs. I still think that even though after this stretch going into the break, it's a hellish going into the deadline until the All-Star break, it's the West Coast trip. But if they can survive that, why can't this team make a run in the second half, at least in the playoff, play in? I don't think they're going to go to, you know, I don't think they're an Atlanta Hawks team like last year where they just get super lucky. I think if they make the move, again, I'm biased to De'Aaron Fox. I'm a Kentucky Wildcats fan, so I saw him playing. I was trying to remember what team it was. I didn't remember if it was the Cat years or the BAM. It was him, Malik Monk, and him were going crazy Kentucky, and I loved him more than Lonzo. And I said he's better than Lonzo. Well, and yes, he's not a 3-point shooter, which I can already hear a lot of people say. Well, you got RJ, and you got Mitch, and Randall's bad shooting threes this year. He brings, again, he's not as defensive as Elfrid Payton. He's not as good defender as Elfrid Payton, but he's quick and he's better in transition. And imagine, and this team is when they are on the break, they are really good. You know, guys like RJ, guys like Obi quickly. But then we are the slowest or one of the slowest paced team. You put De'Aaron Fox at point guard, you're going to go up those rankings very quickly because, you know, Fox is one of the quickest players in the league. And yes, is his 3-point shot not great? Yes. He's still averaging 21 points a game. And guess what, guys? He can hit free throws. How many games are we yelling at the Knicks for not hitting free throws? He's about a 77 to 80% free throw shooter. So, yeah. Yes, he's not maybe the greatest 3-point shooter, so average about 30% from 3. Fox is the guy. Again, I've hammered it because obviously I'm biased toward the Kentucky guy. I was like praying the Knicks would maybe trade up for him. If we can get rid of Randle and Fox is in here, yes, are they going to the championship? No, but maybe this is part 1 of potentially our big 3. You know, if he's your 3rd best option, you know, again, Donovan Mitchell or someone else, who knows, you know, who else knows who's going to be available?
Fire Tibbs and sign Cat.
Mark Berman was doing an interview, and he was saying that, like, Johnny Bryant could be the next head coach of the New York Knicks. Who is Johnny Bryant really close with? Donovan Mitchell. So, you know, it's something to think about, you know.
They're starting to all of a sudden see a little bit of speculation. Like, Donovan Mitchell's from New York. He loves the Mets.
Diehard Mets fan. Let's go.
I mean, I don't see, and the thing is that, like, whether it's Fox or Mitchell, like, Fox is 24,
Yep.
Mitchell is 25. like you at least have maybe almost 10 years with those guys to figure it out. And like you said, it would just be step one of like, okay, this guy is part, like Donovan Mitchell is part of a championship team. Julius Randle, not part of a championship team. So I think like you just see like a step in the right direction, because like I always say in sports, the ultimate goal is for you to win a championship. If you get a Donovan Mitchell, you're on the right. You're making the first step. You're on the right track, because I think Donovan Mitchell is that good. I think Donovan Mitchell is one of the most underrated players in all of basketball. I could do a whole video about him. That guy does it all. Like you give Donovan Mitchell the ball, he's either going to blow by you, he's going to hit the three on you, or he's going to pass the open guy and make a quality pass. Not like Julius Randle. Like and he plays defense. Like Donovan Mitchell literally does it all. And in De'Aaron Fox, like if people are concerned about 3-point shooting, if you're concerned about De'Aaron Fox 3-point shooting, but you're on the Ben Simmons bandwagon, then you should just not be allowed to talk basketball anymore, because De'Aaron Fox is miles better from Ben Simmons. At least he'll try to shoot a three. I mean, Ben Simmons is so bad, he won't even try. And at least we know De'Aaron Fox's mental makeup is nowhere near as bad as Ben Simmons, because if you think that Julius Randle's fall from grace mentally was bad enough in New York, Ben Simmons would be 10 million times worse, because when the Knicks finally do get to the playoffs, as soon as Ben Simmons has a bad game and the Knicks fans boo him, you won't see that guy. He'll quit and he'll just stay home. So, I mean, you really don't want to see that happen. And his contract is, if we talk about like the Knicks like have cap space right now, you bring in Ben Simmons, all of a sudden your cap space is not the greatest, because his contract is insane. It's up there. I mean, De'Aaron Fox is a much more palatable contract than Ben Simmons does, because I think De'Aaron Fox at 5 years, $25 million per is not awful. It's much better than if you would have added in a John Wall contract. That contract is insane. So at least you have a young guy on a reasonable deal, multiple years. So again, like you at least have those 4 years to, again, make those incremental improvements, develop the young core you already have, and then see where you're at.
I mean, I can understand why people want Ben Simmons, because imagine Ben Simmons in a Tibbs system. Bigger six. I mean,
he fits. He's a Tibbs player.
He's a Tibbs player, and I hate to bring up some 2K, but a 6'10" point guard. Again, he's matching up with anybody. He's matching up with Giannis.
He's a matchup nightmare.
He's a matchup nightmare, and then defense.
Guard the team's best player.
Exactly. I mean, I want nothing to do with him. Like you said, he's a diva, and his skin's as thin as a piece of paper. But again, Fox is the guy I've wanted for everybody. I think most of us here, I think all of us here, want De'Aaron Fox on the Knicks, and the Kings aren't the most well-run organization, so they believe they can go into the playoffs with them. And we can't acquire De'Aaron Fox. They're still interested in Julius Randle, so maybe they can just take Julius Randle and try to run it in Sacramento. Again, it's just to see what happens.
We'll see what that move is, and then we'll react to it. So again, thank you for watching, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Everybody's stuff is in the description, so make sure to check us all out. Until the next one, be safe, be smart, be healthy, and let's go Knicks. Make a move.